So hello everyone, my name's Katie Scott and I'm the editor of Insurance Times. I'm joined by Donna Scully, who is the director of Carpenters Group, to talk about our long-standing anti-fraud roundtable fraud charter. So meeting 4 times a year, both virtually and in person, the fraud charter is a collective of senior counter-fraud professionals from across the insurance industry, including insurers, law firms, industry bodies, regulators and other suppliers, such as technology specialists and claims experts. So just to give us a bit more information on Fraud Charter, Donna, can you talk me through how Fraud Charter was founded and how long it's been running?
Yeah, I've been involved obviously for probably the best part of 12 years, but I can't take the credit for the idea and for starting it off because that goes to Richard from AXA. So I was chair of Motor Accident Solicitor Society at the time, and he came to our conference to speak on counter fraud work that the insurance industry was doing, and he told me he was setting up this charter in conjunction with the Insurance Times, and it was going to be counter fraud specialists, defendant lawyers. And I sort of said, will there be any claim people there? And he said, I don't know, why not? He said, why don't you come? So it was quite innovative that long ago that somebody like me from the dark side would be invited as chair of MAS. So I went along and it was amazing, and he was amazing. He chaired it, and obviously Insurance Times were there supporting it. And the thing is, he was such a big character. He was just so knowledgeable, so enigmatic. He could kind of get people there, and really from the get-go, it was a really good place to be. And it was very open because Richard would insist on leaving the competition at the door, and that we were all joined up. And this was an area, and I really agreed with him that we were kind of very united in that kind of counter fraud space.
Nice. And for you, what is Fraud Charter's mission statement really? What does it seek to achieve?
I mean, for me, from the get-go, and the reason I've probably given it so much time and effort, and I put so much work into it, is that I think, and you've been there, to get those kind of that level of counter fraud experience around the table together. These guys who come from insurance companies and brokers are just at the top of their game. I think, over the years we've been able to bring regulators along. We've been able to bring the government along, and we've had ministers there, Ministry of Justice. At the moment we have Ofcom there as well. And we've just been able to, it's been amazing to have that kind of specialisation there. I think it's very constructive. I think it really is a great place to share information, to look at fraud threats coming down the line. So the way I look at it is that, the power of the fraud charter means that we make life harder for fraudsters. So it's like a win-win for me.
No, definitely. And what impact do you think the Fraud Charter Group has had on the wider insurance industry and the fight against insurance fraud? You say we make it harder, but what has been some of the practicalities?
Yeah, I think practically for me, if something new is coming down the line in terms of fraud threats, we're kind of looking down and seeing what they are, how we can fight them, what we're going to do as an industry rather than individually as a company. That competitive edge goes out the window. I think as well, for me, what we've done really well at Fraud Charter is if we have some reform coming along where we think it might expose fraud, or it might cause more fraud, we can kind of get the regulator in and put that to them and look at the unintended consequences, be part of the impact assessment in terms of how it's going to work. With the transfer of the regulation of the claims management companies, and they were big on our agenda for a lot of years. We brought in the FCA, the new regulator, and they came to all the meetings and explained, and we kind of put pressure on them to explain to us who was going to deal with it, how they were going to deal with it, that it had to be done well. And I think, they did do well, and, they understood that it was very important. So I think things like that for me are real practical and tangible results and successes that the Fraud Charter has had.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously you mentioned you've been involved with the Fraud Charter for quite a while now. How would you say the group has evolved and developed over your tenure as sort of sponsor and co-chairs, and not just in terms of sort of topics and what it looks at, but also in terms of attendees?
Well, for me, I think Richard and AXA sponsored it for 2 years, and then he became unwell and he was stepping down. and it needed another sponsor. And I think for me, I'm so grateful to him for inviting me along and giving me a seat at the table. I felt like it was my turn to take the baton and to carry it on, and to do the sponsorship, which I've continued to do. He came along for a few years, until we lost him. But I think for me, it's really grown from strength to strength. I often think when I look around the table now, particularly at the in-person meetings, I hope he'd be proud, and I kind of see it as his legacy. And I think he'd be saying, we did well, it's definitely better. I think we get, a lot more people, we get top people. I mean, we're really getting people at the top of the counter fraud game and the top of their industry coming along. Decision makers, exactly. Because I think Richard was very keen that we weren't going to be a talking shop. Yeah. And we had to have people who had the confidence to be open and so on. So I really think we've done that. And I think, there's a waiting list to join.
There is.
I mean, online we can do a lot, can't we? We can have more people virtually, but I think in person, we're getting approached every day, and I think for me, that's a real. That proves, doesn't it, that it
proves the appetite to fight fraud, and definitely. I mean, with our most recent virtual one, I think we had about 37 or so attendees, wasn't it? So obviously a huge collective of expertise right there.
Yeah, giving you their time and their energy and their expertise and their input. You know yourself at these meetings and online, people are very open and very constructive and very willing to share ideas and information. So I really love that kind of, that openness. Because I think the more open we are and the more joined up we are, the harder we're going to make it for fraudsters.
Definitely. And what would you say has been the Fraud Charter's biggest success?
We won an award, don't you, a few years ago? Yeah, I mean, probably about 6 or 7 years ago, we won a community award,
that's brilliant.
Which was lovely in the city. And that was kind of just because I think we were kind of seen as somebody that was doing something good in the community, in the sense that, fraud affects everybody every day. It means their premiums go up, it means they lose money, it means they're stressed and traumatized. So I think what the award was about saying, we like the work you do. It's good to see, something constructive happening and showing us that you do care and you're not sort of letting people away with it. So that was really great. I think, I don't know, when the fraud task force was put in place a number of years ago to look at the fraud space, we were quoted quite a lot by the government in terms of the work of the Fraud Charter and what we did, and some of our recommendations were passed over to the fraud task force. So I think that was a moment for sure,
Definitely. No, it's brilliant. And what would you say is next then for Fraud Charter? Where do we go from here? How will it grow? How will it progress? What do you think is the vision now?
I think like any other part of insurance at the moment, we can stand still. I think what I was really proud of from Insurance Times point of view, and, as co-chair, was, when COVID hit, we went online immediately and we continued to do our work. And in fact, I think our work was needed more than ever because, people were in their silos, weren't they, working. Definitely. But we kind of got everyone together straight away within a couple of weeks of COVID. And we talked about what kind of fraud would we see in COVID. So I think for me, it's always, yesterday we talked a lot about AI. And AI is wonderful in lots of ways in terms of what we can do in our businesses, but it's also terrifying in terms of what fraudsters can do with it. So for me, it's about continuing to innovate, continuing to look down the line and not kind of stand still. I think we can never ever say, oh, look how great we are, at this. And from the meetings, there's always something new, or we kind of always a little bit aghast, aren't we? And go, really?
Can't believe that's happening.
Oh my God. So I think, more of that. And just making sure, and I think if something comes up that we think we need to act on or we need to take to government or something like that, well, we can do that. We have that kind of voice, and I think we have the ability to do it. So
definitely. I always enjoy when you sort of push back when you have the regulators there and like, well, what are we going to do about this? And it's nice that the Fraud Charter Collective can have that voice, definitely.
Yeah, and I think for me, with those people there, I kind of feel it's my job as the co-chair to kind of say, well, what's your timescale? How are you going to police this? What are the penalties going to be? Because otherwise, regulation doesn't work if it's not kind of policed and implemented. So, I kind of play the devil's advocate sometimes, don't I?
It's a good role to have.
Yeah.
And what would you say is perhaps the biggest learning you've taken away from a meeting that you've attended?
I find that the Fraud Charter meetings quite scary, really. I know I don't look it because I'm a talker, but I'm not a counter fraud specialist. We obviously have counter fraud specialists at Carpenters.
Yes.
But they're not sharing it. They attend it, So for me, it's that, I have to understand that I don't have the same knowledge as them. They know a lot more than me. So really, I kind of see myself as a facilitator. So I will do my research and my homework in preparation for the meetings. I do try, but I kind of really engage them to talk about it, or I hand over to them, because really, I'm kind of, I know my place, and it really is down the pecking order in terms of fraud, fighting fraud than them. So that's kind of where I have to be careful of that.
Yeah, definitely. No, I always feel like we learn so much because we've got people from so many different parts of the industry there that all got very different experiences. And learnings from the sector, so sharing that is great. And you mentioned obviously it's quite scary, but what would you say is the current fraud threat that's really sort of keeping you awake at night? If you had to pinpoint one thing that's coming down the line fraud-wise that you find terrifying?
Cyber.
Yeah.
I'm worried about AI, obviously, because I know
it's kind of interlinked.
That deep fake thing is quite scary. We discussed that yesterday. But cyber is the one really for me. With you owning your own business and hearing stories of cyber attacks. That's the big one, isn't it? Because we're very IT orientated as an industry. We use IT on a big scale, which is great, and it's great for delivery of service. But I think for me, knowing that there's so nasty people out there who just want to damage our business or steal our data or whatever. So, that's a big area for me and as a business to protect ourselves, because, it can cause a lot of damage.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for talking to me, Donna. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for right now.